What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another episode of ProGuides Best Champions to Main, now on patch 11.19. The champions that we pick for this series are strong picks with high performance, but also have low ban rates and are unlikely to be nerfed anytime soon. So they're reliable picks for climbing and are definitely worth investing your time in. We also do have a series that covers the most broken and contested picks in each role, so be sure you're subbed to the channel so you don't miss out when we post those as well. We'll start things off in the top lane with Poppy. While most tanks generally have a more passive playstyle, with the main goal being to farm up and be more useful in team fights, Poppy is a very scrappy exception. Honestly, she just plays more like a bruiser. You'll constantly be looking to trade with your opponent, and if they ever get near a wall, you may even be able to commit for an all-in kill. Her W is a direct counter to mobile top laners like Jax, Camille, and Fiora, so once you have the items to fight them, you can force hard on them, and there's not much they can do about it. And in teamfights, Poppy isn't just a CC bot like other tanks. She's actually more of a damage threat, so you'll be diving priority targets in an attempt to bring them down or at least force them out of the fight. For your itemizations, the build that we have is the standard tanky path, but you can actually go Divine Sunderer and Sterix as your core if you want a more damage-heavy build instead. This is especially good if you're dealing with beefy juggernauts or tanks. But of course, the damage builds are tougher to pull off rather than the tank ones, so you might want to check out our coach at ProGuides.com before you try that out. We got top tier coaches that can help you figure out exactly what you need to work on, whether it's your champ pool, whether it's build path, or decision making in game. It's always more helpful to have an actual coach go through your games with you rather than just watching these videos, so go check it out if you're interested. Now our second top lane pick is HEIMERDINGER, pretty much the ultimate lane neutralizer. Unless the enemy has the foresight to pick a Syndra top lane, of course, but I can pretty much guarantee you won't have a bad matchup as the Donger. He gives constant pushing power, so opponents that want to trade him never get the chance to. If they try to force a fight, they'll pretty much always be at a mini disadvantage, plus you just hit them with a good old grenade, rockets, and double laser combo, and they get chunked for half their base HP. Post level 6, you get the best insurance of the game with your ult. At this point, champs like Camille and Fiora get a huge boost in their all-in potential since they usually turn even hard losing matchups into winning ones. But as HEIMERDINGER, you can just drop an ulted turret and watch them melt. You can even easily turn jungle ganks into double kills if you play your cards right. Just make sure you rush stopwatch and Zhonya's as quickly as possible. Now our last top lane pick for today is actually Sejuani. While Sejuani top is technically an off-meta pick, it's not that uncommon. About 1 in 10 Sejuanis opt for that role right now on the ladder, and that's because it's just straight up better for her. In Diamond Plus gameplay, Sejuani's 11.18 jungle stats have her at almost exactly 50% win rate, but in the top lane, she's over 53%. The buffs that she's getting are definitely targeting her jungle viability for pro play since she very often shows up in the pro meta, but I just see it as an extra buff for her top lane power as well. It isn't anything too crazy, but hey, a buff is a buff. Sejuani's definitely more of a scaling pick, so don't just run at your opponents and start fighting from level 1. You need at least all 3 spells to combo, and against most opponents, you'll probably need a couple of items. Now taking a look at the jungle next, our first pick is SKARNER. He's incredibly underpicked, so unless you're up against Captain Flowers, you will probably not have him contested. SKARNER's very straightforward kit and playstyle make him a consistent performer patch to patch, regardless of the meta. His ult is just so good for making picks, so anytime you have flash up, group up with your team and look to force with it. Once you find your pick, you'll easily have your numbers advantage to secure free objectives. Now our second pick is TALIYAH. Mechanically, she's a lot harder to execute than most other junglers. You have to be able to land your WE combo to really get the most out of her. It's crucial for executing ganks and skirmishing with the enemy jungle. That said, it's pretty hard to land on a target that knows how to dodge it, so it's a good idea to play to gank for allies that already have some CC. That way they can set you up for the guaranteed kill. Now you notice that the build that we have is completely glass cannon. This is because TALIYAH is a one-shotting machine once you get rolling. If you aren't really doing well enough to maintain Magi stacks, you probably aren't doing well enough to carry the game either. If you really need Zhonya's, you can consider swapping out Horizon Focus for it. And for our final jungler, we have AP Shyvana, but instead of running Dark Harvest like most AP Shyvanas go, you'll be taking Press the Attack. Press the Attack gives you a lot more dueling power, which makes a lot more sense since you're building Asher's Tooth. This solves the main issue that I hate with AP Shyvana. Every time I've seen one, they just seem so useless. They refuse to fight pre-6, and once they do have ult, they just sit back, fling fireballs, and rarely actually auto-attack. Then once their ultimate wears out, they just go back to being useless. Having Press the Attack, though, is a huge boost to early game fights, and contrary to how most people play her, Shyvana is actually an insanely strong duelist, so you'll be able to stand up to your opponents at scuttle and maybe even invade their camps. But honestly, I kinda want to see them rework Shyvana already. This press the attack build does help emphasize her dueling strength, but I miss the AD bruiser Shyvana that makes more sense for a dragon like her to be a scrappy melee champ. So that brings us to today's question of the day. Which champ do you think most needs a VGU? That's a visual game update. Whether it's a champ that's outdated or just has a really unhealthy playstyle, let me know your answer in the comments down below. Next up, moving into mid laners, our first pick is Annie. Being one of League's very first champions hasn't kept her from being one of the best mids in Season 11. In fact, Riot has even nerfed her a couple of times, but she's still going pretty strong. And not only is Annie a really solid pick, but she's also super easy to use, so literally anybody can pick her up and start playing her with pretty good results very fast. She's one of the few champions in League that can be a big damage threat and provides hard engage for team fights. Oh, and a pro tip, if you want to be the main source of engage for your team, you'll probably want to zone you so you don't get blown up right after you flash in. And our second mid laner today is Galio. He's another super easy to execute mid laner, but unlike Annie, he's very team oriented as a pick. Instead of looking to burst down squishy targets on your own, as Galio, your entire game plan is to basically work with your team to secure kills. Now, that isn't to say that Galio has no combat strength on his own. He's actually a really strong bruiser that's pretty much designed to stomp the popular melee mids. If they ever try to move in to trade on you, you just react with your taunt, which then sets you up for an easy EQ auto combo. And yes, this also works on the assassins. Oftentimes, opposing laners will just concede the lane, giving you the ability to shove and roam to help out the rest of the map. Our third mid laner today is actually Kayle. When you pick Kayle, your goal is to basically completely give up all lane priority for the first few levels, but the wait will be worth it. Given enough time, she scales into one of, if not the hardest carry in the game, and one with an ultimate that hard counters any threat that tries to take her out. Reaching 16 is obviously a huge spike, but that can take a while, and your team may just lose the game before you reach that point, so don't just AFK farm every game without any situational awareness. As long as you're able to at least reach level 11 and have 2 items done, you can actually start grouping up for team fights around objectives and still be very useful. Now moving things down to the bot lane, our first pick is Twitch. Twitch is a bit more on the high risk, high reward side of things when it comes to AD carries, because he's got no escape, and if the enemy bot lane picks 2 aggro champs like Leona and Tristana, you're as farmable as the minions if you don't have good laning skills. But if you can master wave management and other aspects of laning, he's really fun. Once you get going on Twitch, you'll play just like an assassin in the mid game, constantly going for picks on overextended, squishy enemies. You can even go for the collector as your second item if you're going to be doing this more than team fighting. And once you reach the late game, find a good position to open up, and you'll just erase the entire enemy team before they even have a chance to dive onto you. Now our second bot lane carry is Sivir. If you prefer more consistent picks, she's just about one of the safest options that you can go with. Most of the time, you won't even be trading with your opponent too much. Instead, your goal is just to neutralize the lane by shoving fast with Q and W. This works great when you don't want to risk dying to scare your 2v2 lane opponents, or you're worried about jungle ganks when your own jungler absolutely refuses to come counter gank. As far as your build, we got the lethality one still, since it comes online a lot faster and is still super strong in the mid game. That said, if you think that you're going super late, the crit build will give you much higher DPS, especially against beefy tanks. And our last bot lane pick is SERAPHINE. She is a solid alternative to the standard marksmen that usually get played, especially if you're a team player that wants to enable your allies rather than being the star carry yourself. Being a mage, she's a really good lane neutralizer, easily able to clear up waves with Q and E once you have enough AP. Your main goal is to just scale up and reach team fights. The build that we have prioritizes AP and ability haste for maximum utility over trying to put out as much damage as possible. If you want to itemize more for damage, you'll need to go for Ludens and Sword Shoes instead, and then replace the last item with Void Staff. Now to round out our list with supports, we'll start with Janna. Look, I know your ego may get in the way of you picking her, but there's no denying that she is a really strong pick right now. And she's also super easy to use, so it doesn't take much effort to learn her. Besides, you don't have to be one of those enchanter mains that sits back waiting to be carried. There is a big difference between a good Janna player and one that just wants to coast to a win with a better team. You can be proactive with her. Use W to harass in lane, or use her high movement speed to go for roams. Janna may not sound like the best ganker, but that actually gives her the element of surprise, which you can easily lead to kills on overextended mid laners. But if you're more interested in playing for the late game, maybe you should consider Zilean. There's a pretty strong argument that he's the best scaling support in the game, and he actually just bodied me recently in solo queue, so I kind of agree with this. He is the king of enabling allies of all types. One thing to note though is the max order for his spells. If you're playing to bully lane, Q-max is pretty strong for 2v2 trading, but if you're playing to just provide utility in fights later, you'll actually want to max your E first and then your W. Now, since I always play Zilean to be a hard scaler, the second option is usually what I go with, especially if I'm in a losing lane matchup. Now finishing off our list, we have Zyra. She's pretty much the ultimate play to win pick, because there really aren't that many bad matchups for her. Even strong aggro lanes are powerless, because you just shove the wave and poke them under tower. The only thing that they can try to do is force for an all-in, but Zyra isn't just a poke mage. Her plants also have strong damage over time when left alive, so you'll usually at least be able to trade back a kill if your opponent's forced too hard. And post level 6, you have one of the hardest hitting combos of any bot lane champ. So if you can't land everything, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a kill as long as your AD carry can manage to right-click the target. And that's it for the top 3 champs to main on 11.19. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to sub so you never miss out on our meta guides and you're always in the loop of what the best picks are. Remember to let me know what champion you think should get the next VGU down in the comments below, and also don't forget to check out our community Discord. That's it for today, so best of luck on the Rift everybody, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.